First, the Rwanda bill is finally set to pass through Parliament later this week, but open border fanatics won't go down without a fight. The controversial charity Care4Calais has recruited hundreds of volunteers to identify illegal migrants who are due on the first flights and help them make last-minute appeals to stay in the UK. Its chief executive, Steve Smith, told the newspaper, "We know this is a desperate government who are going after those with the least likelihood of being able to secure legal support to challenge their Rwanda notice. If Parliament passes the Rwanda bill next week, we will leave no stone unturned to identify those at risk and signpost them to get legal support." Well, while Care4Calais like to take the moral high ground, they do have some blots on their record. Just last year, they were reprimanded by the Charity Commission for serious misconduct and mismanagement. Before that, their founder, Claire Mosley, stepped down from the board amid claims that she had an affair with a Tunisian migrant. And after breaking up, he tried to set one of their Calais distribution warehouses on fire. She separately threatened to drag a volunteer out of a room by her effing hair. I'm joined now by the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. It's Chris Phillips. Chris, thank you very, very much. This is the first one I want to talk to you about tonight. How worried should we be in this country about groups, I would argue potentially masquerading as charities, like Care4Calais, doing their best, their level best to keep people in Britain that we have scheduled for deportation?
Well, they're creating a huge danger because we know for a fact that many of the people that have come over, many aren't criminals, by the way, but many are, and of course, what we've seen is some of those people turn to terrorism, and I would suggest that some of those people are actually here because of charities such as Care4Calais.
What I can't understand is, if this was a kind of hairy Albanian man who was stood on the beaches of Calais or somewhere nearby and saying, we can offer you a little bit of support, we can, feed you and clothe you, and there'll be someone meeting you on the other side with a bit of legal advice or whatever. I think that people would really take quite a dim view of that. But if you call yourselves Care4Calais, then all of a sudden that's OK, Chris, and it just seems a bit bizarre to me. It's a double standard, isn't there?
Well, I think, to be quite honest, if people want to go and give their time over in Calais and actually, look after the people that are in difficult situations over there, then that's one thing. But actually to help them to get into the UK, effectively break the law, and when they get into the UK to stay here, and now it will again be against the law as we see it, then that's a big issue. And I think the fact that they're a charity just makes this so much worse.
Yeah, look, I absolutely know Care4Calais will just say, they are a charity and they're just giving aid and support and all of that stuff. That's fine. But there is, for me, a Rizzler paper's worth of difference, right, between, the people who are over there doing the helping, staying in contact with people, giving them legal advice and all of this stuff to try to desperately help them all stay in Britain even after a government scheduled them for deportation. And then some of the people who are ushering those people onto the boats. I know Care4Calais will say that there is a big difference to that and they are not indeed human traffickers, which of course they are not. But last year, Care4Calais founder Claire Mosley told the Mail Online that with regard to the volunteer who was threatened, this followed a period of issues with this volunteer. I acknowledge that the comment made in the heat of the moment was entirely inappropriate and I have apologised. But I want to get your expertise really on this next story, Chris. So we are just months away from the Paris Olympics, but the opening ceremony could be drastically watered down due to the threat of an Islamist terror attack. The current plan is to have national teams sailing down the River Seine on barges, but French President Emmanuel Macron is considering shifting the entire event to inside the Stade de France over security fears. This follows threats last week made by the ISIS death cult against Champions League matches held in London, Madrid and Paris. Chris, look, is this over-caution, or actually is this yet another example of us changing our way of life because of the terrorists?
Well, it's a little bit of both of those, actually, Patrick. And I think the French do feel the terrorist threat probably more intensely than we do. In fact, they raised the terrorism threat to the highest level after the attacks in Moscow just a few weeks ago. And I think, we were very nervous on the run up to the Olympics when it was in the UK. And I think they are very much aware the fact that Paris and France are going to be on the front pages of or back pages of every newspaper across the world. And of course, a single terrorist attack could alter that and actually be devastating for France and all those people that are going along to it. So it's a big issue for them.
Is this just it now, though, Chris? I mean, is this just where we are at, where any large-scale joyous event that may or may not involve some barges down the River Seine has to be confined within a much smaller area so that the armed police can keep the jihadis out? Is that just where we are now as a world?
No, well, we've fought against that, of course, and the whole point of counter-terrorism policing and the work that the security services do is to allow people to live their normal lives. Big events go on, every day of the year somewhere, and we've got to police them properly. But if you've been to France, right across all their big cities, you'll see little teams of soldiers walking around with guns because they do fear terrorism. It's much closer to them over there.
Look, Chris, thank you very much. It's a good point to end on that, because I actually would not be opposed to that over here. And I know that it's not ideal at all to see people walking around, armed police, or whether it's members of the military. I suppose it's a personal question to ask, though, isn't it? Would you feel more or less safe if you knew there were more people with guns, the good guys with guns, walking around? That is the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris